My report today is on Abigail Adams. As a historian, it's very important to seek to give a fair perspective of all views, and so we look at multiple sources. Um, Abigail Adams was the wife of our second president, John Adams, also one of the loudest. John Adams was one of the loudest voices for independence back in 1776 in Philadelphia, and Abigail Adams is arguably one of the most famous women of the Revolution. After looking at multiple sources, I found that she's also very positively viewed from almost every side. She has a very famous line where she wrote John Adams while he was at Congress, trying to decide what their new government should look like now that they had declared independence from Britain, and she urges him to remember the ladies. And these few words have been quoted and misquoted throughout American history for many causes. But there's so much more to Abigail Adams than just this one letter line that most school children can tell you. So Abigail Adams was born in Massachusetts, and she married John Adams when she was 15. She also stayed home and watched the farm while John Adams was out and about in Philadelphia helping create the new nation and declare independence. She also stayed home with the farm while John Adams first went to Europe with her oldest son, also John, also a president. Eventually, she decided to join John with her daughter Nabby, and they traveled Europe. She was one of the more traveled women, having gone to both London and Paris with John. She was very simple, though, because she came from New England, and she was kind of disgusted by the extravagance that she saw throughout the European courts. She thought that the royalty was excessive, and she also saw British royalty in balls, and so she became First Lady when John Adams became president and decided that it was important to continue what Martha had started and extend it to more social circles, but she wanted at all costs to avoid the excessive, flagrant use of resources that she saw in the other courts. She also is one of the most well-studied and documented figures from the Revolution, not because she's awesome, although that's very true, she's awesome, but because she was a very extensive writer. She wrote letters, especially to John, her dearest friend, as she called him, very regularly telling him about what was going on at the farm, what was happening in Boston, what the troops were doing, how she felt about it, and also had very strong opinions on politics and government and what she thought should be happening in Philadelphia. It was very good for John to have that reminder of what was happening in Boston and why they were in Philadelphia. Also, she was very forward-thinking. During one of the times John was away, she decided that she wanted to avoid smallpox, and so she inoculated all of her family, which was a huge deal back in the day because you took live pus and you put it in your arm with a knife. And so she knew her whole family would get sick, but she was forward-thinking enough to be able to be willing to do that. Also, she was incredibly inept at managing a household, whereas a lot of other founding fathers had to spend a lot of time focusing on home affairs. John Adams could focus on politics because Abigail was incredibly good at keeping the books and managing affairs at home and running the farm. And she also cared a lot about education. She advocated strongly for a African-American boy in her town to get educated, even though originally many people didn't want that. She educated him herself, and also then was able to convince the townspeople to let him attend school because she believed education was for everyone.